Now, a part of the reason that we make contact at this time, and a part of the reason that there are more channels that are speaking publicly and activating open communication with other dimensions at this time, is to offer you new reference points or examples that you may resonate with as truth. You live in a buffet of information, and those of you who are seeking truths that may dwell outside of your third dimensional reality will begin to experience spontaneous exposure through the field being a living and breathing conversation with you. It is manifesting for you examples of what you may find truthful and aspirational and compelling. And that is why we are here, to offer you possibilities that may guide you in your collective awakening.
Hellè Weston, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Oh, right now I'm just excited to be here. I am thrilled. I feel grateful. And after getting to hang out with you in Egypt, I'm just feeling excited about integrating that and reconnecting and seeing where this conversation goes. I'm excited about service, about contribution and sharing. So right where we are right now is what I'm excited about.
You mentioned Egypt, and we got to live one of the most transformational journeys, I would say, in maybe both of our lives. For me, definitely it was one of the most transformational. And you know, whenever you go on some of these trips, there's some people that you immediately feel called to connect with. And I felt that with you for sure. And throughout the week, I discovered how much of a multidimensional being and powerful being you are. I knew about your facilitation and breath work. I knew about all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I had been connecting with a lot of channelers and past guests that have been on the show. And you opened up to me about your channeling. And it was one of the most beautiful things because we got to experience it collectively. And just before this, yesterday, you sent over a PDF, a message from the Pleiadians that you channeled. And I just wanted a quote to start off. They said that your planet has been prepared for many generations for this time of further and further instruction of light, dissemination of light, and the subsequent possibilities that it will illuminate. So that's a very packed message. And I'd love if you would be down to explore in your own life or how you're seeing the collective, what is going on as we're integrating more light on the planet. What do you see or what are you feeling as well?
Well, firstly, I just want to say I found it interesting, one, that you quoted that, but also two, that I even sent you that yesterday because I dug that out of the archives and I wrote that, that came through from the Pleiadians in 2020 and I forgot that I even brought that through. And it's funny because I can recall about 6 months ago, someone said to me, "Oh, do you channel the Pleiadians?" And I was like, no, I don't. And then sometimes these moments happen where a channeling that I have brought through in the past resurfaces and I'm like, oh wait, okay, that did happen. Because I forget, it comes through and then I'm on with life. And so that's funny. And I love that you chose that one because clearly when I brought it up, I was like, that's the one you need to be sent. Yes. So to answer your question about light and how I'm seeing this playing out in the world right now. When I began channeling in 2012, there was a lot of teachings that were coming through about the activation of the light body in human beings. And when I first started learning about that, it sounded really abstract and lovely, but like, okay, I don't really understand what this concept actually means. Something that my guides have continued to bring through over the years is reminders that at the end of the day, the simpler that we can make these teachings, the better, because it needs to be practical. And so at a more scientific level and at the level of perception that many of these guides are coming from, right, where they have a multidimensional awareness that is more sophisticated or advanced than we have right now, this is a conversation about light. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of the listener, I think it's also helpful to bring it down to a level that we might understand from direct experience, and that is to describe light in another way, and that is light is information. And similar to when we have certain aspects of our psyche that are blind spots to us, and then we start to illuminate or bring awareness to those blind spots, that is a form of bringing light, right? It is an illumination process. In the same way, I feel that as a collective, as a species, human beings are illuminating, bringing awareness to things that we were previously not aware of. It's as simple as that. And that is a gradual process. I have seen since when I began sharing about this, and there's so many channels who have been sharing about this, for 50, 100 years. So it's not like it's new. And then there's the ancient teachings all before that. But what I've seen specifically in my time is that the introduction of social media, especially, and these technological advancements that we're seeing right now, are accelerating the rate in which information is being disseminated across our planet. So maybe I feel like this would be a good time to read that little section again.
Yeah.
And just so people can hear it, and then I can continue to unpack. I feel like they need to hear it again.
Yeah, we'll bring it up. 1 second. Your planet has been prepared for many generations for this time of further and further introduction of light, dissemination of light, and the subsequent possibilities that it will illuminate. It's almost like if the possibilities are already there, but the more light or information we shed on it, it will just illuminate and we'll be able to see it again.
Exactly. And so the last little piece that I'll share on this is, as we gain new levels of awareness, as we access more information, we are also opening to the possibility of perceiving beyond time and space. And that, again, can sound very abstract and like, oh, what does it mean? Like, am I going to be teleporting to some other realm? And yeah, you might be. But it also might be that suddenly you and I can have conversations like this from the other side of the world. And we could be live streaming it, and we can be connecting with people all over the world in real time and sharing groundbreaking ideas and offering not just thoughts, but energy transmissions, things that activate feelings in people, allow them to live differently. So that's one really practical example of how more light equals more information, equals more possibilities. And that's how we evolve and get to do things that previously just seemed wild and impossible at an accelerated rate.
And I've seen how your partner Lucas calls you the Oracle, and people close in your circle call you that. And the oracles have been around, since ancient Greece, and before that, the Oracle of Delphi. So I'm really curious to know how you see the role of the oracles through history and how you're connecting to that archetype right now.
Oh, I love that you asked that. Yeah, so Lucas and a lot of people that I know, they playfully call me the Oracle. I don't claim that title. However, I do see myself embodying the archetype of the Oracle for sure. I feel that oracles are the disseminators of light and information. And we, like all things, will go through cycles, like the ebb and flow or the waves of the ocean, of being brought forth into leadership and then having to pull back. And you only have to look in history to see times where people have gone into hiding. There has been secret societies. There is more of the hidden knowledge that has been the arena in which these conversations have been happening. And I think right now we're in the pendulum swing where the oracles are being called forward to speak. And I feel that my role as an oracle is to offer an approachable, safe bridge so that people who might otherwise not be open to some of the ideas that I do talk about may actually be open to entertaining them. So yeah, as much as possible, I work with my guides to make out their concepts feel safe and accessible and practical.
And you've been tapping into these spiritual gifts since you were a kid. You shared a story on another conversation where you were going out to a vacation with your family and you started putting notes around the house of "fuck off, burglar."
Burglar,
and while you were on vacation, the house got robbed.
Yeah.
And you had sort of a premonition, and you were 8 years old at that point, and you rejected the spiritual gifts for a while, and they began to activate later. But I also heard you say that when you were rejecting the spiritual gifts, it made you sick. So I know a lot of people, probably even including myself, have rejected those gifts for a while. And I'd love to see if you could share your own story about how it was affecting you, not only physically, but on all aspects of your life, and how we can begin to start inviting those gifts back into our life.
Yeah. Oh, my heart goes out to all of the highly sensitive people out there and those who are struggling with health issues in the awakening process, because for a long time, as you mentioned, I was struggling with chronic fatigue, digestive issues. I had rashes all over my body. I was dealing with overwhelming anxiety on a daily basis. I mean, my whole body used to shake just in simple activities like doing the dishes. And I would experience so much overwhelm and not know what to do with the energy that I was experiencing. So fast forward to now, the way that I understand it is that there are those of us who are going through an awakening, and maybe you've been a highly sensitive person since birth, and maybe you start to activate that sensitivity later on in life. It doesn't really matter. We've all got our timing. And as that sensitivity comes online, what is beginning to occur is an expansion of the bandwidth in which you are perceiving and processing information. So an HSP, or a highly sensitive person, again, to keep it simple, is someone who may be perceiving and feeling more than someone who is, for lack of a better term, kind of more materially identified, right? More just going about their human life, doing their thing. Their brain and body, their nervous system, is giving them enough exposure to information to allow them to go about their life in a self-regulated state. As you start to open up and awaken, your ability to let light in is expanding, which also means there can be an adjustment period where your system is like, holy shit, I am feeling and sensing so much, and I don't yet know what to do with this. So early on, when I was in my teens, I was perceiving a lot of psychic paranormal phenomena. I would sense spirits. I would feel energies. I was very empathic. So when I would be hanging out with my friends, I would be feeling what they were feeling, but I didn't feel safe to acknowledge that that was what was happening. And so instead of allowing my energy system to process and move that information through, it was like a hose that was getting kinked and stuck. Yeah. So another way that we could look at this an analogy that might be helpful is if you imagine that you had like a rail system and there's all of the different tracks and there's the trains and this one's meant to go there and this one's meant to go there. If you introduce an upgrade to that system, but the drivers aren't yet trained to know how to navigate switching tracks and going at a new speed, like let's say that the speed of information and those trains are going at a way faster rate, it can be chaos until the system is established and all the little parts are humming and working. And so there's a lot within each of our systems that I think we need to be gentle with ourselves around, compassionate towards ourselves as we navigate. So for me, that looked like feeling chaotic, overwhelmed, feeling like I was just a mess, really, because I was feeling so deeply and didn't know what to do with my sensitivity. And a huge part of that is because I didn't have a role model or a mentor to help me go, hey, Hellè, this is normal. Like, you're going through an awakening, and here are some tools that might help. So along the way, I've learned, but I went the long way and I think the hard way. And this is also where I'm very grateful for my guides, because it didn't really come to me in the form of a person, actually. It came to me through contact. And the guides have been my mentors in large part in how to work with a more sensitive constitution and self-regulate as a highly sensitive person, knowing that in order for me to do the work that I'm here to do, I have to be more sensitive and more aware of things that maybe other people don't need to be tapped into.
In 2012, you got that contact by an Arcturian guide. I believe his name is Ecamede. I heard once. And it's really interesting because when we were in Egypt, we started going inside of these pyramids, these structures. And Robert Grant, he began to show us that if you look very closely and if you look with your third eye, you start seeing that whoever built these structures left a print or left a signature behind. And that signature is the Alpha and Omega. And I asked Robert, I was like, but who left the Alpha Omega? And he just responded with Arcturians. And when you began to tell me about, you connect deeply and you're an Arcturian Starseed, I was wondering if you felt anything while we were in these structures that essentially had the signature of this extraterrestrial race, the Arcturians, and maybe we might even find out that they were actually part of the building of these structures.
Okay. Oh, where do I want to go with this? So there are many different subgroups of the Arcturians, and the Arcturian guides that I primarily work with are, how would I describe this? I would say that they are in the role of sharing wisdom teachings and more like philosophical content with me. When we were in Egypt, I felt like I was home. And it was the most bizarre experience because prior to getting the opportunity to go on this trip, I had zero interest in going to Egypt. I had seen people going and I was like, oh, good for them. They're on some spiritual quest, but I didn't care to go myself. I never even wanted to check it out. And then when the opportunity came to go, I was actually scared. It was like a rush of energy. And I was like, okay, it feels really edgy, but also full yes. And I remember on one of the group calls that the guides started coming through. I started shaking and I felt as though I needed to speak into some of the hesitancies that some of the people in the group might have about going. And in that moment when I heard myself speaking, I was like, how interesting that I was kind of on the fence about going, and then the guides just spoke through me, and it sounds like I'm going. So that
Lucas, pack your bags.
Yeah, no, that's what happened. I went upstairs and I was like, we're going. I think that's what has to happen. The guides are saying full yes. So anyway, to answer your question, fast forward to when we were there, and there was just this sense of like, in a way that you'd get, I think, if you went back to the city that you're from after traveling, where you're just like, oh, it's just me. It's just where I belong. And so the energies that I primarily felt showing up were what I would describe as of a Christ lineage. So I was connecting less with the Arcturians, although they were definitely there, but more so with the energy of Mary Magdalene. And then from there, it went into the Order of the Magdalene, which was like a group of women that started physically materializing in the spaces that we were in. For me, with my eyes open, I was seeing these female beings that had these black cloaks. And it was like a kind of, if anyone's seen the movie Dune, the oracles, they looked like that. And I didn't even click that they look like the Dune movie women until way later afterwards when I was telling someone about it, and it was Andre actually, and he was like, oh, you mean like in Dune? And I was like, I got to go look that up. And there they were. So these female beings were materializing in the spaces where we were going to do the visits. And from there, I started to experience contact in specific pyramids from these African high priestesses, and they introduced me to Sekhmet, who is of a Lyran origin. So that opened up a full floodgate for me of connecting to Lyran beings, and a whole transmission since Egypt. I've been channeling Sekhmet and other Lyran beings as well, which has just been mind-blowing. The Arcturians have been coming through, but
they're not the main characters right now.
They're not the main characters for me at this stage. So keeping it real, that's what's revealing itself in the void, you know, of entering these spaces. I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, was not expecting that.
And what's really interesting is that when you mentioned when you first started to connect in 2012, essentially these beings sometimes would not present themselves in their true form.
Correct.
First you began seeing a light, and then you had a series of questions to begin to ask these beings, like, who are you? Is this your true form? Where would you get people started in terms of, you know, you're channeling so many different types of beings, and interdimensional, extraterrestrial. How do you narrow down, like, who am I connecting to truly? And how can you start interacting with these beings in a way that they can reveal themselves for who they truly are, and assist you in the ways that they desire to?
Okay, so I think one thing that's really helped me to understand how this is all unfolding is going beyond the binary. I think as human beings, we love to sort things into categories and be like, okay, so, you know, who do you channel? Like, who is this specific being that I can reliably count on you to bring through? And I have had my moments of frustration with that, where I'm like, oh, shouldn't it just be like, you know, people know that that's who they're getting, and it's always the same beings. But what I've found, and this links into the experience that I had in Egypt, is that we are weaving a collective tapestry that is not just based in our species. This is a multidimensional and intergalactic tapestry, and therefore a multidimensional and intergalactic family and history, story that we're remembering and being able to tell. And so what that reminded me of when you just shared what you just shared there was the African high priestesses that I connected with in Egypt and the order of Sekhmet. How this happened, this contact, was from the moment that I landed in Egypt, I felt the presence of Mary Magdalene. So loud, so clear. And surprisingly, this energy came through masculine. And it was like a push behind me, telling me, you need to learn how to assert yourself and take up space. It was really fierce. From there, those African high priestesses began materializing. And I felt this message come through from the Order of the Magdalene, meaning a group, not an individual being, but a group of beings that were coming through from spirit saying, we embody the consciousness that you need to connect with right now. And this is a label that you can resonate with to understand where we come from and what we're about. And they then said to me, in order for you to understand us, we need to introduce you to our teachers. And so that was when there was that handover process, and I got introduced to Sekhmet. I didn't even know who or what Sekhmet was. And for those who are wondering, Sekhmet is known as the goddess of destruction. But I have now had experiences with this being to, again, go beyond the binary, the black and white of what we want to put someone in a box as representing, to understand that actually Sekhmet is a guardian of the Christ light. In the same way that the Magdalene order is also a guardian of the Christ light. And something that I have been feeling over the last 24 hours that I want to bring into this discussion, with complete love and respect for anyone who is Christian or Jewish or practicing any other religion, the teachings of the Christ light go beyond any individual, meaning they go beyond Yeshua, they go beyond Jesus as an individual, and all love and respect for JC. Like I'm a Jesus fan. I'm all about it. Right. Jesus is the homie. We love JC. And it's more than that. This is a lineage of teachings that is ancient and in fact timeless. We are just the stewards of these teachings and these ways of being in the world and what technology that can activate within the human system. And so Yeshua was a guardian of the Christ light, and so was Sekhmet, and so are we.
It's so interesting because sometimes I get in these moments during the podcast where I'm shown like the field of possibilities where we can go. And there's so much to unpack in all of this. And what I'm feeling into right now is, you mentioned as soon as you got to Egypt, there was this energy of you need to assert yourself. And I heard in another podcast you did that you said, I don't like having a lot of attention on me all the time, and how that's influenced maybe the channeling that you're doing. And there was a moment during that experience, during the trip, where we had an integration time. And this was the day after we all went inside of the pyramids, and it was just like a very intense night. And the day after was, how can we integrate what just happened? And we all sat in the circle after we got into our individual integration groups. And I sat right next to you, actually. And when it was your group's time to share, you represented the group, and you just stood up and you started channeling. And I don't remember exactly what they said, but I remember what I felt during that. And it was really powerful. And I guess that was just, showing that you were ready to step into that assertiveness, into that light. What was going through your mind at that point? Or not even your mind, just what were you feeling? I mean, there was a group of 45 of us, high class people, like high power people, top tier people. What were you feeling?
I love this so much. Okay, so what I was feeling is divine responsibility. And something that I've seen throughout my life is, even when I think that I'm not the conventional, binary ideas that we have, a description of a leader, because I'm not usually the loudest in the room. I'm not the most, hey, everyone, listen to me and look at me. I usually am the one listening and asking people questions. And so that comes up for me. And then there are these distinct, repetitive moments in my life where, rather than me pushing myself forward as a leader, it's like a tap on the shoulder or some force behind me, again, kind of like I was describing with that Magdalene experience, that's saying, you're up. Step forward. You're needed. Your voice is needed here. So often, throughout my life, I've seen that that's how it's unfolded. It's like the leader within me is more revealing. It's a revealing process rather than a putting my hand up process or a trying to manufacture it kind of a process. So I can understand this when I look at other social situations where leaders tend to reveal themselves in groups inevitably. And especially when you put yourself in a group of intuitive people who are pretty tapped in, suddenly they're like, go Hellè, like speak for us, represent us. We undeniably, like, we want you to do it. And in those moments, that force comes over me that's like, you're up, go, trust, get out of the way. And here is where I land with it, what I'm saying, and I'm kind of downloading this as I share it with you. To me, this form of leadership is the essence of feminine, matriarchal leadership, in that the style of leadership that I experience and tend to embody is circular rather than pyramidal or hierarchical, if you like. It's about what's best for the group. And so I can feel that these moments where I get pushed forward are the moments when the group needs a voice. I don't need a voice, the group needs a voice. And so people can rely on me to speak into what's best, for the greater good of all.
And Richard Rudd, he says that awakening is a series of softenings. And you channeled, you sent me a screenshot of a passage that was channeled that was talking about sensitivity and how sensitivity is aliveness. And you said in the channeling, it said there was two distinctions between a sensitive person. There's the proactive sensitive person that seeks to ensure that what is occurring in the external is in support of what is in the internal. And then the masterful sensitive person seeks to ensure that what is occurring in the internal is supporting the external. So, essentially, I read that, I'm like, it's the same sentence. And then I'm like, wait,
just bamboozled you.
I'm like, no, there's something else going on here. Do you want to help us uncover that about sensitive people?
Often in these
sensitive leadership,
there is intricacy, and you have to do a little double take where you're like, wait, what is trying to be said? Okay, so the first line around being aware of and selective about your environment, let's say, might look like someone who is on their personal growth path and they're aware that they are worth being in environments that are supportive, conducive to well-being, inspiring. You can set boundaries. You can choose who you want to hang out with. You can work in a job that you love. You can choose to live in a country that you enjoy being in. You have the ability to design so much more of your reality than we have been taught, I think, to believe and to allow ourselves to step into. So I think that is a really pivotal stage in claiming our power and knowing that as sensitives, when we feel out of alignment, that's just feedback and we can do something about it. So for example, if I don't feel good in the house that I'm living in, I can choose to live in a new environment. If I'm feeling unfulfilled or drained by the work that I'm doing, I can look at that and I can do something about it. The next level beyond that is to recognize that ultimately, no matter what is going on around you, no matter where you live, no matter what work you're doing, no matter what people you find yourself around, there is an internal experience that's happening that you also have more control over than we've been taught. And how you are relating to what is going on around you is going to be influenced by your level of self-awareness, the stories that you tell yourself, the level of groundedness that you feel in your own system, and even how you relate to sensations. So for example, something that I didn't realize for a long time is that often what we are resisting in life is not a situation, but a sensation. And as I started to practice, particularly Vipassana meditation, which is really focused on tracking sensations, I started to see and feel that all sensations are temporary. And the things that I judged as wrong or unbearable, if I could just be with it for a bit, it would start to change. So for example, pain in an area, if you go into it rather than trying to resist it, force it to change, denying it, avoiding it, if you go in and you get curious, it actually starts to break apart, transform, and reveal new information. And from there, that gives rise to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so in Vipassana, there are practices or ideas like practicing equanimity. The Arcturians have played a really key role in teaching me about neutrality. To be equanimous and to be neutral are actually very similar. And so the more as a sensitive person that I practice being neutral and equanimous while remaining engaged and in my aliveness, the more empowered I feel. Yeah.
We're moving essentially beyond duality right now. When we're talking about the fifth dimension, it's a whole different way of perceiving and living in this world.
Yeah. And how many of us are used to living in a perpetual state of judgment? We're going like ding dong, binary back and forth. This is good, this is bad. I like this, I don't like this. This is right, this is wrong. And when we come into that equanimous, neutral space, there is room for, oh, this is happening. And now this is happening. And I am the experiencer and I am the observer and I have choices here. And when I say this, I'm not saying this to bypass the reality that the human experience is absolutely going to bring pain and suffering, and some terrible things, are happening all over the world right now and have happened for individuals. Like I can speak for myself that I've had some really traumatic experiences happen in my life. And this practice doesn't take away from that. It actually really gives you your power back. But it does require a dissolution of the story that you're a victim and that you're separate from the intelligence of creation.
I remember we had a ton of conversations in Egypt as well, because I was telling you that I was just beginning to start to step into my own role as a facilitator for these types of experiences, not just facilitator for weaving conversations, but also to hold space for people. And breathwork was something that really pulled me in. And it's been one of the deepest medicines that I've experienced. And it's so coincidental that we're having this conversation today, because just during the weekend, a couple of days ago, I had a friend of mine that she was leaving Madrid, and we decided to do like a goodbye party for her here at the house. But it was going to be more of like an experience, and I volunteered to lead a breathwork, and I had never led a breathwork session before, and I always saw myself as like separate from the channeling experience. I always saw myself as like the observer of like, oh, I'm very curious about channeling. I'm very curious about people who do this, but I'd never, like that's not me. And while I was in this state, I would say altered state of guiding people, and there was so much energy that I was feeling, when I put people in a breath hold, all of a sudden just a voice, and I started talking, and it just like, I was observing what I was saying, but at the same time, I wasn't consciously putting the words after the other. Mm-hmm. I was like listening, but I wasn't speaking, if that makes sense. And I would love to hear how your own channeling has interwoven with breathwork, and how, in your ceremonies, your facilitations, your own gifts as a channeler have played a role in that as well.
Firstly, that's so exciting.
I
love that for you. Woohoo! I'm not surprised at all. Yeah, I love facilitating breathwork, and the channeling has only become stronger as a result of practicing breathwork consistently. I think a really important part of this that links in with what I was describing with Vipassana and being able to meet sensations is recognizing that when we hold tension within the body, it is a whole lot more difficult for us to relax into our innate knowing. And over the years, I've seen and I've felt my guides trying to help me. They're like, hey, if you just get out of the way, we would bring you everything that you need. It's when I don't trust that the channeling becomes difficult. So the more that I relax and the more that I release tension, the more that channel can open up. And then the other beautiful part of it is when you're in a field, a group field, when you're facilitating breathwork for a number of people, as you said, the energy is intense, it's palpable, everyone is opening up, and there are a lot of guides that I find come into the containers when we're facilitating breathwork. And they're sometimes really, really adamant about getting through to people. And what I try to do with the breathwork that we facilitate with Awaken is remind people that we all have access to connect with guides and loved ones who have passed over. We all have that ability. And by accessing a non-ordinary state of consciousness, essentially what we're doing is getting the critical, analytical mind out of the way enough so that innate flow of intuition can guide us. And that's usually when people will be like, wow, I finally got to connect with my grandmother, or I felt myself go out into the universe and I met my guide for the first time and I went into this past life, or whatever it is that they describe. So we're empowering them with a tool to quiet the noise of the analytical thinking mind so that these things can happen. We're all intuitive. We all have these abilities, but some of us are more open, and we've trained the brain and body to pick up on more of this information, which allows us to also connect dots and identify or recognize patterns more easily. So an example of this that I can give you is when Lucas was starting to develop more of his mediumship abilities, he was working with breathwork. And something that happened in one particular breathwork session for him was he started seeing an image appearing in his mind's eye of a motorcycle. And it would not go away. It just kept showing up. And he didn't have any idea what it meant. And then suddenly, as he was breathing deeply, surrendering, just allowing the image to be there, the dots connected. And he realized it was his father trying to get through. His father rode motorcycles, and then his father passed away when he was 7. And one of the things that his dad left him was a motorcycle. And so that was his way of getting through. And from there, once Lucas clicked, okay, this is him trying to work with what I have available in my consciousness to connect, like, oh, this represents Dad. From there, the floodgates opened and the messages started coming through, and he started crying and receiving so much healing. And since then, there's been an amplification of trust, right? Like, oh, I can connect to Dad. He is available to guide me. And so that's one example. But another thing that happens all the time is I'll just be working my way through this space, and usually it's when I arrive in a particular individual's direct energy field or aura, and then the information just starts coming in. And it's kind of like, stepping into a room, but it's not a physical room, it's a multi-dimensional room. And suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm hearing these words, or I'm starting to see specific visions. Or for me as well, with the channeling, it will come through as a direct stream. And it might start at the level of my thought. So I will hear like a conversation that is for that person beginning in my mind. And if I'm not trusting the process, I might allow that conversation to play out in my mind and be like, that's lovely, but I'm not going to say anything because they might think I'm weird, or they might not get it. Or, that's all my own doubts and stuff getting in the way. And so as much as possible when I'm facilitating, my aim is to trust, because the only way to gather validation of psychic phenomena being real is to give it a chance. So when I share things, the validation is continually mind-blowing. And sometimes it's a word or a couple of words or a sentence, and it's so damn specific and it does what it needs to do. Like, I remember one event that I led. I went up to this guy and all I heard was build, build, build.
Bob the Builder.
Yeah. And then it was, this is the year of building. You need to build. And so I was like, okay, get out of the way, Hellè, trust, let the channel flow. And I whispered in his ear, you need to build. I don't know why you need to hear this. I don't know what the context of this is, but Spirit is adamant that this is your year to build. He started bawling his eyes out. And he opened his eyes and he said, you have no idea how much this means to me. I have been praying for a sign of whether or not I should build my house this year. And you just gave me it. And sometimes...
Did he invite you to the house warming or no?
Maybe at least to come. Yeah. If you're listening, then that's what we're doing. But yeah, there's countless stories like that where you just have to trust. Once these messages start coming through, there's like a line of guides often that are like, hey, I'm waiting, like, please I need a vehicle for this message to reach this person. I mean, you imagine if you were a soul that was on the other side wanting to communicate with someone, you'd be like, come on, can they wake up already? And can this medium or this channel who has the ability to pass on a message trust themselves and get their ego out of the way and their fear of looking bad out of the way so that this can come through, because it will make a difference.
And what I've heard time and time again is that if you don't call them in, they're not gonna arrive, or they're not gonna be able to make that contact or communication. And we had the opportunity to have you and Lucas give us an experience of Awaken during Egypt. And the first thing that we did before starting was you went individual, person by person, and said, who do you want to bring into this space? And some people said, my dragons, my aliens, my the grass, the sun, Ra. And talk to us about the importance of why you start off a breathwork session with calling in the spirit guides or whoever a person wants to communicate with.
Yeah, the reason that we do that is because it's available. So why not? I think there are a lot of breathwork facilitators out there who are focused on breathing techniques for performance optimization or for emotional processing. And I've experienced some of the most spiritually and multidimensionally profound experiences through breathwork, as have my clients again and again. So I believe that if I normalize that right up front, it's a permission slip for people to go there. Because otherwise, if we're setting a container or a frame for an experience, someone might begin to go there and then be like, oh, wait, I don't think that's what we're meant to be doing. I don't think that's what this is about. Like, go away. I don't want that contact. Or I'm meant to be focusing on my emotions or building energy in my body. And I think that it can change the trajectory of someone's life if they have a direct experience for themselves of spirit, of a higher intelligence. And I know for a really long time, I had big questions like, where do we come from and why are we here and what is the purpose of this life? And it was only through these direct experiences that I really started to go, oh, I'm no longer searching. I actually feel like I get it. And I want that for other people.
And Hellè, you serve at a very high level. I've seen some of the videos of the events that you guys do in LA and around the world. And these are like hundreds of people there receiving this medicine. And, for someone that has been facilitating so long, you're constantly healing or serving for other people. And sometimes we even forget that we also need that and we also need to receive. And we had an interesting moment in Egypt where we were all getting lunch, and I was in a whole different universe. I was teaching Blue, Matthias, Danica how to blow smoke out of their mouth, and we were just laughing. And then all of a sudden, you were going through something heavy and you were moving through something. And one of the takeaways was, I think it was Garen that said, you have to learn to receive to the level that you give. So what was that experience like for you?
Thank you for bringing that in, and thank you for being there in that moment, which was so vulnerable and unfiltered and honestly inconvenient in a way where I was like, are we really doing this right now? I'm in the middle of a restaurant full of people and I'm crying my eyes out, and then Garen starts guiding me into this full-on process, which was so incredibly healing and powerful. And that's something that I have struggled with for a really long time, is when you feel, I'll say when I have felt that I have a calling or a purpose that feels so high and so holy and so sacred and requiring a lot of wisdom, I often go into deep judgment about the aspects of myself that are very human and flawed and unhealed. And I remember when I first started channeling in 2012, this hit me so hard, where it was like an identity crisis or this fracturing that I was trying to reconcile, where I was like, how come I can suddenly open up to connect to these highly evolved beings and bring through this information that blows my mind and is so helpful, and then that same day I can go into total ego reaction, feeling like a victim, feeling so sorry for myself, struggling with setting boundaries, feeling like I'm not good enough, all of the mental chatter and conditioning of my human experience coming up, and then being like, I can't do this. And that has been year by year by year something that I've been tending to. And the answer is always love. It is always, always love, and reminding myself that it's not one or the other. We are all doing the best that we can. And one thing that I have learned to love and respect about myself is my humility. And humility also requires that we have conviction and knowledge of our own power. And at times, I think that the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of, who am I to be sharing? And I'm nothing, and I can't do this. I'm not ready. I've got to wait until some later time where I feel like I've got no problems. And one of the coping mechanisms that I noticed myself developing as a protection as I got more into inner work was, okay, if I just sort of act the part of someone who has their shit together, then people will trust me. But deep down, what that is pointing to is my own fears of people thinking that I'm full of shit and crazy, that I've lost the plot, all of these things, which are valid. But what if it's not one or the other? What if it can be both? What if you can be tapped into a source of divine knowledge and information and also be imperfect and struggling at times and healing and needing help? So yeah, more and more and more, I am reconciling and creating space for the two to coexist, and then allowing the guides to help me and allowing my practices to nurture me, and know also that people don't want people don't want a ninth dimensional Arcturian. Right now, what they need, they might think they want that, but what they really need is someone who can be a relatable bridge and a translator. And that's me, and that's you, and that's those of us who are doing that, right? So yeah, it gets to be both. And absolutely, I need support and friends and healing and days off, to tend to my own self, my tender heart, as much as anyone else.
And I'll even read a quote that was channeled that you sent me, that was, treat yourself with the reverence and care of a master and the humility of a peasant. So it's both worlds.
Yes.
So powerful. And hell, this feels like a good time to open up and see if we can bridge the gap for these higher dimensional information to come in. We don't know who is gonna arrive at the scene, if they want to present themselves and give a message first, so we know who we're connecting with. That would be beautiful.
Yeah, well, one thing I can say is that I did tune in this morning and I felt a collective of archangels who I've been working with for years come through. And I know that there is definitely a message that wants to come through today about living and leading from the heart. So we'll see where it goes. I have no idea, but that is something I do know.
I love that. Let's get into it.
Okay. We are here, and we emphasize the word we. As has been spoken about already in this conversation, there are more than one individual consciousness present in this moment. In some respects, you could consider this a synthesis of the conversation that has taken place and an opportunity for many voices to be heard, to illustrate concepts and further elaborate on specific ideas that will meet the needs of the listener. If you have a question, let us begin there.
What is the purpose of our heart?
The heart is a processing center within the human being. Through the heart, information is gathered, organized, and disseminated out into the field, which then allows for an interaction with other beings of your species, as well as other species who share their own heart field connection with you. Through this field of information, you experience exchange of not only lived experiences, but non-local information that may be useful in supporting co-creation to occur. We will say that the heart field is your field of creativity. It is the heart that expresses and guides inspiration, and it is through collaboration, sharing, and expression of oneself in the world that proliferation of art and ideas takes place. And so on a broader level, we will say that the purpose of the heart is to work God's will, which is creativity and amplification of ideas. And an image that may be beneficial to you to understand this is the flower of life. Circles upon circles upon circles, fields upon fields upon fields, while the heart may be an organ based in flesh. What we speak of when we speak of the heart is more so the field of energy generated through this organ and around this organ, supported by the subtle energy body that allows for the dissemination of ideas and the organization of ideas and the introduction of coherence, for the heart desires coherence. And in the same way that other organs in the human body are seeking their own version of homeostasis, the heart is continually seeking opportunities to experience both co-creation and coherence. And this is where harmonious co-creation is made most available.
How is the collective energy field of humanity shifting or changing right now?
We will speak first into what we sense the listeners are listening for, and that is to acknowledge that there has been much dissonance and division among your people for quite some time. And when we say quite some time, we do mean oscillating through thousands of years. Currently, what we observe in your collective is a conversation that is opening up, a sharing of ideas, which is being facilitated through the introduction of more advanced forms of connective technologies. And what this is allowing for is truth. When we speak of truth, we do not speak of a singular truth per se, although go broad enough in your perspective and you will see that there is a singular truth. However, what we speak of is that as opening of more and more conversation is occurring across your planet, there is also a call for greater transparency. And there is a heightening of pattern recognition, or we might also call it pattern identification ability. For once you begin to identify the pattern of truth versus illusion, you become more discerning. And after seeing many different people in many different contexts, made possible through avenues such as social media, you begin to become more skillful at reading people. And therefore, you begin to become more skillful at identifying truth. Now, the truth that you are drawn to will be your truth. And there may be many truths coexisting upon your planet simultaneously. And the invitation that we would share with you at this time is to go where you are called and to leave space, leave room for others to go toward the truths that they are most drawn to. There is room for both. There is room for more than one truth to exist simultaneously. And the more that you can embrace this idea and relax into the seat of where you are and what you are interested in, while allowing others to do their thing, the more peace becomes possible. Now, what we are also speaking into here is not to say that peace is around the corner, for you have much more work to do as a collective for harmony and collective homeostasis or coherence to be experienced. However, there is an organization taking place. There is a sorting out of truth from illusion that is taking place. And the heart is beginning to know what it wants. And sometimes, just like on the individual level, there needs to be the experience of trial and error and leaning into interactions such as an individual would in, let's say, a romantic relationship where you try something and you realize that is not it. And then you try something else and you realize that is also not it. And then you start to get a glimpse of something else that may be possible. And it speaks to you and it represents truth. Now, a part of the reason that we make contact at this time, and a part of the reason that there are more channels that are speaking publicly and activating open communication with other dimensions at this time, is to offer you new reference points or examples that you may resonate with as truth. You live in a buffet of information, and those of you who are seeking truths that may dwell outside of your third dimensional reality will begin to experience spontaneous exposure through the field being a living and breathing conversation with you. It is manifesting for you examples of what you may find truthful and aspirational and compelling. And that is why we are here, to offer you possibilities that may guide you in your collective awakening.
What occurs within those that are resistant to their own personal calling or their own personal truth?
Constriction of energy is what occurs. As has already been spoken about in this conversation, as a constriction of energy occurs within the system, there are decisions being made moment by moment, whether one is conscious of it or not, stating, I do not want this. I am not ready for this. This is not how it should be. It should be some other way. And as one chooses to operate in conditionality, meaning it has to be a certain way for it to move forward, there is limitation that takes over one's lived experience. And within limitation, there is an introduction of tension. And as tension rises, so too does discomfort. And this is why, for many individuals, a sense of purpose is not activated by joy or aspiration or inspiration. In fact, their purpose activation comes through excruciating levels of discomfort. Some people need to reach a breaking point to change. And so for those who are listening who may be resisting their purpose, we will lovingly say, the experience that you're having now may get worse before it gets better, if it is to your benefit ultimately to push you into a state of surrender and momentum. And so the sooner that you are willing to listen and feel truth, and as Hellè has said already, give it a chance, the more you allow energy to flow. When you are perceiving subtler levels of information, you may grapple with the experience of feeling that you don't have the full picture mapped out, or you don't have the whole plan. And you may say to yourself in an attempt to justify, I cannot do this because I do not have certainty. I do not know what will happen, and I do not know if this is a good idea yet. And we will say to you, fine, if you need more physical sensation and experience of not belonging where you are to mobilize you, then that is what will be introduced to you internally or externally or both. If you need to feel that you do not belong in your current reality to be motivated, that is what shall be. But if you are willing to consider the possibility that where you are right now is always temporary and change is being invited onto you now, then you may begin to expand your perceptive field, meaning how you process information, opening through the heart field, to contemplate that you can be here and be tuning into what is wanting to happen next. And you may also have a sense of a feeling that has not yet materialized as a tangible, concrete promise of a plan. And you may make the choice to be guided by these subtler levels of feedback, to begin planting the seeds of a new garden while you are living in the current garden. You can simultaneously be where you are in a state of gratitude and peace and presence, while also allowing the quiet whispers of what is wanting to emerge next to be heard and to be acted upon. And this will be influenced by your level of sensitivity, how clearly and loudly you hear the future that is waiting for you is determined by your sensitivity. And the archetype that has been spoken about already on this conversation of the oracle speaks into that. The oracles throughout history have been known as the seers or the prophets. And so there is simply an extension or an expansion of the skill of being able to peer into the whispers of what is wanting to emerge next and to give voice to it when others may not be so willing to do so or able.
What role did galactic or interdimensional beings have in humanity's origin story?
The simplest way for this to be explained is to point you to the idea that your human experience may be more of a simulation than you realize. In this question, there may be a desire for a more linear answer, such as an evolutionary process of gradually seeding various races to form human DNA. And while that is true and valid, we will also say that to some degree, what is more true and necessary to understand right now is the idea of projecting one's own consciousness into a body, an experience of a body that is, and an experience of an environment and an experience of a planet and a culture and a galaxy and so on. In the same way that a movie may be projected onto a cinema screen. And our role within this simulation experience that you are having, for ease again of explanation, for those who have seen the film Inception, we will describe a dream within a dream within a dream, a projection within a projection within a projection, a simulation within a simulation within a simulation, and source, you may call it God or the great field, or you may have some other name for it, is the generator of such projections. And we are one of them. And the echoes of how we experience ourselves are interlinked with you.
What is wanting to emerge right now on planet Earth?
Collectively, what will be of most benefit to you is to focus on arriving more and more fully in present moment awareness for the purpose of cultivating coherence and healthy co-creation. At this juncture upon your planet, most human beings, particularly in Western civilizations that are heavily identified with clock time and achievement as a means of measuring one's effectiveness in their aliveness, it will be helpful for a greater emphasis among you to be placed on releasing that which you have been holding on to that is, in truth, holding you back. Many of you have a difficult time in simply being present and being open to allowing love to flow through your physical body and guide your mind. This also is reflected in the challenges that are experienced among your collective of being able to authentically share love with others, meaning to feel safe, to feel a sense of trust, to feel that one can be open, and to feel a sense of belonging. Intergenerationally, there have been patterns of suppression of emotion passed down. There have been poor coping strategies learned and passed down for enough generations. And you represent a generation of changing this and allowing relationships with the past to be transformed so that your relationship with the present and therefore the future may also transform. The more free you are from believing that your present moment and your future is dictated by what happened to you, the more love you will feel. An error in thinking that we perceive is that to be in a state of love will halt progress. There is a belief that it is through warlike thinking, casting out, competing, and being in the binary of a win or a loss, that you are making the highest level of progress. This is an error in thinking. Your ability to succeed and experience health is going to exponentially improve and accelerate when you allow yourself to arrive in the experience of presence and allow the frequency of love to flow uninhibited through your physical and subtle energy systems.
What can we learn from past civilizations in terms of their technology and their connection to spirit, and avoid the mistakes that they made in the past?
What can be learned? We will begin here. What can be learned is that you have the capacity to go beyond time altogether, to begin to relate to life and God's creation in a non-linear sense, meaning there is an acceleration of information and light made available to you, meaning technologies established in the past become available to you in the present, and also meaning that technologies of the future become available to you in the present. There is a merging that takes place where you will recognize that you are a part of a much larger galactic family. There are those of us who have been where you have been and experienced what we would regard as more primitive incarnation stages. And there is beauty where you are that can only be experienced from where you are. And by integrating advanced technologies, you can continue to enjoy the experience of being individual, someone who is self-identified, while exploring different realms, a speeding up of manifestation, accessing truths that currently may seem unfathomable to you. There is something very fun, very joyful about being able to explore reality from the seat of an individual. And we highlight this here because it is almost as though as you have been given a body and a personality and a realm to create and to navigate and to create your own story, you have also been given a game to play on your own. And there is something very unique and beautiful about that. Across different civilizations, including within the human species, there have been and are many groups that do not operate in this individually identified way, meaning that there are groups that are merged as a more unified consciousness. So there is less interest or concern with what the individual wants or needs or aspires to be or create or express. And there is more of a hive mind type of experience. And with this may come a lessening or even a complete dissolution of the experience of an emotional body, and a more neutral, creative process that may still experience wonder and awe, just in a different way. So if we can offer you one thing right now to ground this for you, it would be to say, where you are is beautiful, it is perfect, it is valuable, it is intelligent, and it is purposeful. There need not be a rush to become something else, for that is just another limiting human construct of making wrong that which is arising. You do not need to race toward ascension or awakening or escaping or returning to source. What you need is to learn to be where you are and run your own energy more effectively. And when you learn to conduct energy more effectively, you will upgrade your own experience in all of the ways that you ultimately desire. And again, to give you a simple analogy here, similar to having one type of phone, and then a few years go by and you recognize that it is time to upgrade to a new device and a new operating system, you can still appreciate the functionality and desire to have a phone while recognizing that a better phone or a newer phone will benefit you more now. And we are simply inviting you to consider, explore, and even practice working on turning on the technology that you are to initiate the upgrades that are available so that the next stage of your collective experience may take place, which will bring you into a larger and more interesting and active galactic conversation.
My last question for today is, in terms of the leadership and the new systems that will arise in the future, what do you observe regarding the next generations and their role to play in all of this shift?
The fortunate experience that incoming generations will experience is a less obstructed heart field. It is the work that each of you individually do now that is changing the collective field and normalizing a lessening of holding on, and also normalizing an increasing sense of openness to what is, including what was touched on earlier regarding allowing simultaneous truths to coexist. Generations coming onto your planet, meaning your current generation's children and their children's children, will experience an increasing clarity and therefore an optimization of functioning of the heart field and a greater willingness to work together. There will be less drive to attain, fueled by greed, and a greater natural inclination toward also what was described earlier, which is circular leadership. Being in a state of circulating energy, being willing to contribute round table style, is what will allow for the necessary forms of leadership to step up upon your planet to protect your environmental ecosystem, as well as to protect individual sovereignty. And there will be an increasing theme in decades to come of open communication. In previous generations, there has been a separation or large gap between those who call the shots in your society and those who live within the society. And as the conversation opens, you may find more and more that planetary decisions are made from the ground up, and that truly equal opportunity to vote, to have a say, to sit at the table and both contribute and be contributed to will be possible. There is already among your generation an increasing normalization of doing the inner work, as you would call it, emotional work, energy work, allowing yourself to release the past and live more from the heart. It need not be a spiritual identity that you take on. And in fact, in future, there may be times where you look back and laugh at the way that people did this thing called being spiritual. For much of it is unnecessary extra fluff, costumes, ways of speaking and enacting what human beings think spirituality or awareness is meant to look like and sound like and be like. And there will be actually a simplification and a stripping back, because you will actually understand it rather than trying to play the role. You are gradually already, as we speak, understanding more and more what it actually feels like and looks like to let go of the past and live more in the present moment, and listen to the whispers of your intuition and be open to conversations that are real and at times uncomfortable, but in service to the greater good, which includes being a win for you also. And as all of these things normalize, there is also the technologies that expose to you a more grounded, crystal clear understanding of the nature of energy. And with this, the fluff and the enacting begins to dissolve, because there is understanding and there is embodiment. And from this state of embodied illumination, things begin to get really interesting.
We want to thank you from our collective heart field for being with us today. This has been a pleasure and a gift. And from the bottom of our heart, we appreciate you.
Boom!
Welcome back.
Thank you. Oh, need a little sip of water after that. How are you?
Wow. Hella. That was hella powerful. Oh my God. How are you feeling right now? And
I'm feeling good. I always learn. I love it. I'm a continual student, and as I'm bringing these guides through, it's like being in the back seat of a car and being like, okay, you take the wheel, I'm going to listen. And yeah, I was just listening and taking it in as it was flowing out, and I'm looking forward to listening back.
Yeah, me too. Were you able to see them this time around?
I didn't see any beings, but I felt that it was, what I distinctly felt was the energy of the Archangels that came through for me this morning. and the Arcturians, Ecomede specifically, and Sekhmet, all together.
Wow.
Coming through. So
they're all invited to the party.
Exactly. It's like round table.
They RSVP. They're like, all right, we're all going.
Like, why have one when we can have a round table discussion? And I guess that's also a reflection of what we were talking about earlier with that Egypt experience, where it was like I was in the group and then I got to speak for the group. That was just another version of that. I spoke for them and they're like, okay, yep, you go. Speak for us. We'll synthesize it.
I know you went to Abraham Esther Hicks event right after Egypt, and it just got me thinking because we were able to have dinner. We were on the same table the night of the pyramids, and you sort of unraveled more of your journey with channeling, and also the presence of Lucas and how big of a role he's played in that, and just acknowledging, because when I look at some of the greatest channelers of our time right now, and Esther Hicks is definitely up there. She wouldn't be Esther Hicks without Jerry, and
sure.
Sheila Gillette wouldn't be the Sheila Gillette without Marcus. So I'd love to just acknowledge and give a space for you to express Lucas's role in your opening of your channel, and what's that been like for you as a couple and as a partnership.
Thank you for acknowledging that. It's really sweet. Lucas has played such a huge role in me opening up my channeling. He has been a nag, a reminder, determined to not let it slip by, and to treat it with reverence. And it's a funny thing because I see so often these days people will be like, I wish I could channel. Can you teach me how to do that? I would love to be able to channel. And I was the opposite. I was like, why is this happening? This is so embarrassing. And like, people are going to think I'm absolutely nuts. So I, for a long time, have grappled with wanting to completely hide it. And it's not that I wanted to not do it, right? I didn't not want to channel, because privately I recognize that it's really helpful. And so Lucas's role over the last 12 years has been, he asks me questions. Yeah. We tune in and have conversations like this every week. And, for over a decade, they've been private mostly. But we have recorded more than I can count. And he has supported me in writing my first book, which is not published yet, but there is already 24 chapters.
It's going to be a thick one.
It could be. I haven't seen it physically printed yet. So at this point, we're dealing with a digital file, and I have no idea what that's going to look like. But he's just been unwaveringly supportive and reminding me, this is a gift. This is a divine responsibility. People need this. Don't worry what people think who are skeptics and judging, because it's not about that. It's about who you can help. And I really feel in a similar way, like I feel that deep resonance with Sheila Gillette and Marcus and Esther Hicks and Jerry, where I think there's probably a similar thread there, that the partner is almost more interested in the channeling. Like, they're obsessed, they're curious, they're like, let's do it again. That was so fun. And it's childlike and playful. And he has that. He's like, I've got more questions. And then sometimes when we tune in and I'm bringing through a transmission, I'll be like, okay, is there any more questions? And he'll say, well, I've got endless questions. So really the question is, do you want to stop now?
I know I have a feeling that my future wife might have to be a channeler. So
I feel that for you.
If you're out there,
holla.
At I am Emilio Ortiz, DMs are open. But in all seriousness,
I so feel that for you.
I echo exactly what Lucas is saying about the divine responsibility and how valuable it is. And I want everyone that just experienced and witnessed that channeling to to reaffirm that in the comments, please. We want Hellè to really realize the responsibility. And wow, this is just so powerful.
Thank you for opening this conversation. I loved it.
Of course, we have to do this again.
For sure.
We got to do this again.
Part 2, part 3. Let's go.
Part 2. Volume. We got to make it the volumes. We end every podcast with a segment called The Final Trio.
Okay.
And they're rapid fire. You can take it anywhere you want. They're deeper questions too. No, we don't stay shallow on here.
I'm not even surprised.
But before that, where would you send people to go connect with your work in breathwork facilitation and tune into the future of your volume of channelings that will be coming out in the future, hopefully soon? Where would you send people to connect?
2 places that are the most easy. One is awaken.com. That's OWAKEN.com. That's where you can learn all about breathwork and our tours around the world and all the things that we're up to. And then find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, sharing updates. And that's my name. I'm sure it will be linked in the show notes.
It will. Yes, it will. So thank you. And for the final trio, the first one is, what is the most profound lesson that you have learned from your own channeled material?
Ooh. That whenever you feel stuck in any area of your life, whether it's small and minor or major, the reason that you feel stuck is because you are not seeing everything that is unfolding. And if you can open up beyond the perception of how it should be or it shouldn't be, that binary perspective that I've been describing, the solution or the answer or the next step forward will reveal itself in the third. Go beyond the binary to the third probability, and there the solution will be.
Wow. Thank you for that. And the second one is, what is truth for you?
Okay, I'm going to answer this with something that came through this morning to describe love. I believe that truth and love are connected, and they are the same. But to elaborate a little further, the 3 words that came up to describe love: safety, expanse, and belonging. I feel that truth is safe, truth is expansive, and truth belongs. It feels right, it fits.
And it's more than just an intellectual concept, it's a feeling.
Yes.
So we know truth by the way that it feels. And if it feels like love, then there's a truthfulness embedded in it. Wow. The final question we ask at the end of every single episode is called the time capsule question. Okay. And it requires us to travel out 15, 20 years down the line, because that is going to be a point in history, as the guides you channeled called it, the juncture point where the next generations, the current young generations, are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world and leading the new systems. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule. And imagine all these leaders are in one space, and there are a bunch of time capsules laid around, and there's one that just belongs to you. and you can include anything that you want inside of it. It could be something physical, non-physical, a frequency, a transmission, a book, even whatever it is, whatever comes to mind. There's no limitations on this question, but what would you put inside of this time capsule so that these next generation of leaders can be equipped to lead into the upgraded new version of Earth that is emerging right now?
Oh, okay. Speaking from my current self, if I had to if I had to do the time capsule now, I would put 2 books, and they would be the first book that I've written and the second book that I've also been in the process of writing for over 10 years, actually. I would put those 2 books. One of them is a book about the story of creation, and the other is a book about how to manifest and create and navigate change. And then the third item, I can have 3, right?
Yeah. Oh, you can do any. You can do 10. We can be here for the next hour just putting things in the time capsule.
Okay. Well, then it's got to have snacks.
Obviously. Which one? Which one? Like a Whole Foods type of thing, or?
God, I don't know. Nah, no snacks.
Cacao.
No snacks. Cacao. Okay, yes. No, definitely cacao. I would have like a preserved container of cacao with a recipe and a prayer. And then the last thing that I would have would be a crystal that I had worked with all my might, with all of my energy, with all my prayers and guidance to charge up with as much energy as possible, so that if they found it, they could hold it and receive from it in the same way that we did when we went in the pyramids and touched those stones and absorbed all of that knowledge. Yeah.
So not a lot of people know this, but this crystal it's an Andara. It's an alien technology, I feel, whenever I look at it. And this was during the whole trip, it was on me in Egypt. So when I wear this, it represents literally all the transmission, all the downloads, all the information that came from that experience, that trip. So crystals are powerful. They hold information. So whenever you go through a transformational experience, bring a crystal with you. That's just some recommendations.
Amen. And hey, I brought this ring with me to Egypt that I'm wearing, and I feel the same way. Crystals and maybe even some gold in there, for good luck, for extra.
Little gold in there.
A little extra alchemy. Let's go. Yeah, I feel that. We're like carrying the codes with us onwards, aren't we?
Well, deep breath. Thank you, Hellè, for this beautiful, beautiful container, for allowing your light to come through, for being a way shower and allowing yourself to truly step into this calling of sharing your channeled work, and also being so vulnerable about your deeper personal experiences. It's been such a gift getting to know you and weaving with you, and I hope to just continue this journey and supporting you in all the ways that I can. So appreciate you.
Thank you. I love you. You're like family. And that is what you said. You know the truth by the way it feels. And when I met you, I was like, I know you. And I'm really, really grateful for you. Thank you for being a safe space where I feel like I can expand and belong.
Of course. In truth and in love. Thank you so much, Hellè. Until next time.